Hi, good afternoon. I'm impressed that I've got so many people, so maybe you're just here for a sleep. I thought I'd actually introduce myself and put the talk into context by telling you a little story. So please don't go to sleep. So once upon a time, back in 2003, I was in England starting my career as a French teacher in a secondary school in England. And England, obviously, with its great pro-EU stance, that was amazing. And those students really they hated the subject because it was mandatory. By extension, they hated me. And I don't know if you've ever been alone with 34 or even 36 fairly angry 14-year-old boys, but it's not an experience I recommend to you. So I had to find some strategies that worked. And I was an experienced teacher by this point. I was only about 24, but I'd already taught in Japan, I taught in France, I taught English to very motivated learners. And I had to find these strategies and I had to find them fast. So that the classes and me would get out alive. And so I looked around for strategies very, very quickly, looked at research, talked to my peer group, thought about my own experience, and I came up with a solution. And that solution was basically allowing them to drink water, which in 2002, 2003 was considered so maverick that I got called up in front of a kind of a disciplinary leadership committee that was so concerning. My union rep came with me. Big up the unions. Strongly recommend joining a union or unionising if you're in tech. But anyway, I had to go to that. And I think that sounds really crazy now because although to an extent from what I hear, some schools are going the other way and they're now saying nobody should drink, not even teachers. But in 2023, we know that to hydrate is really important. Now, I grew up in the 80s. I don't have any actual recollections of hydration. My 3 children consider it an imposition if they don't have at least 3 hydro flasks or whatever else on the go at any one point. But my point is we know that that's something that was good. Okay, and we know that that's something that should have been happening and I shouldn't really have been hauled up. Now, the union rep didn't need to do anything, apart from loudly clear their throat when somebody got a little bit too bolshy, and it wasn't me for once. But I took with me as well, because this was pre-kind of presentations and all the rest of it, pre-big internet days. I took with me a press cutting from the Times educational supplement, which had the research and about how children were dehydrated in lessons because the food we were giving them, pre-Jamie Oliver, wasn't great, still isn't. And economic pressures were causing them to have problems. And they couldn't argue with me, basically. I think what they wanted was to try and see if I would rise to the challenge, and I did. And you can't argue with the basic human rights. Well, I mean, some people could, but if you're in government in England, but, I'm not here to get political. So, anyway. So that was what happened. And 6 months later, I actually left that school and I went to run very successfully for a number of years behaviour and strategy intervention at one of the largest schools in the country. And I was managing a team of 30 people. Okay, so I went from kind of being hauled up and asked to explain why I was letting 14-year-old boys drink water to, having the freedom for what I wanted to do. So what's that got to do with anything? You might be asking. Nice little story. Well, it's all about getting them to listen. Getting the board or senior leadership to listen to you isn't actually as complicated as you think it might be. And there were 3 main concepts or learnings that I got out of that initial experience, and a lot of my basic experience in education I often apply to my work. I did it when I was in-house doing security awareness, and I do it now when I'm advising companies and helping people in my network to kind of push things forward a little bit. And I've been really, really pleased to hear people say, even the last speaker say, you just got to get back to basics. It doesn't have to be complicated. And just in case any of you are like my students and you're about to fall asleep or start texting your mates about what you're going to do tonight, you can scan the QR code there. There are links that I'll provide at the end of the session as well. But you can, it's perfectly safe. There's a little ebook free thing. You don't have to register or anything. I promise it's safe. I knew this is probably not the right audience for this. Oh, by the way, while I'm here, please can we stop saying quish? It really makes me cringe as an education specialist. But anyway, you can do that. And there's a little ebook thing, which I do to try and help myself be a little bit more concise, because there's loads I could say and I could go on forever. And normally if I do this, I do it in a workshop and it would take 3 hours. And I always use dogs in my work as well. And I'll come back to that. So I just thought I'd put my friend's dogs up there too. So the first thing that I think that little story shows is listening. And I think cybersecurity people forget to listen. And I'm sure you're all great listeners. But really, any interrogation person will tell you that you should try and leave the silences to be filled. Okay? There's a great deal of power in silence. And we don't in cybersecurity. We mandate, we lecture, we prescribe, we often yell. I've seen CISOs yelling across open floors of offices. I've also been on the other side of that because I haven't always worked in cybersecurity. And I can tell you that it isn't always that great. And I think we need to listen to experts from other sectors, not just education, but other sectors. Some of the people doing the most meaningful, insightful work in cybersecurity right now are people in UX, for me personally. I see a lot of people who are qualified in user experience, who are mainly they're not really security professionals, but they're doing amazing stuff. And they're teaching us really important things. And we need to listen. But also that means listening to the people in our organisation, and we'll come to that, and also listening to your board and your leadership, because you've got to understand what they want. It's like any relationship. And I would also say that we need to listen particularly to human factors experts. Now, human factors, we'll touch on it as well, is a whole discipline. You can qualify. Some of you may be qualified in human factors. And a big part of that human factors is just culture. It's not an easy thing to achieve, but it's about a blame-free culture where you can whistle blow, where you can admit mistakes. And a big part of that is listening. I think if we work towards that, it'd be great. We'll come back to it. And please, let's not have the vanity metrics. I don't want anybody to be offended by this, and I do love a good data visualization. But cybersecurity, especially when cybersecurity leaders are trying to communicate upwards, they have a tendency to put a dashboard out and then it becomes a truth. And I forgot to put this in the resource pack, but I strongly suggest that you watch the talk from Usenix 2023 by Adrian Sanabria, and he's a guy, so you'll probably listen to him more than me. But it's a truth. But he's great, and he did this really good talk called Myths and Lies in InfoSec. Okay? Really, really recommend you watch it. Because what he does is he points out about 3 or 4 particular statistics that we commonly see, and you'll see LinkedIn, the hell site that is LinkedIn, you'll see these stats all over LinkedIn. And we've adopted those, even though they were created by some vendor or somebody just said something one day and it became a truth. And yet we repeat those, and yet we're supposed to be the ones who are the experts in identifying misinformation, in identifying what the truth is, in cutting through all that rubbish. So if we can't do that, how do we expect everybody else to? We also can't be taken seriously. I'll come back to this again. And give yourself permission. And I actually think this is possibly one of the most important things. And it's the thing that I do when I do little sessions, like little 1-hour workshops or whatever else. I will say this often at the start, and it's the one thing more than anything else that people thank me for. A bit weird, but okay. But it says a sad thing about our sector, because it's about saying your values and your insight have worth. Yeah, if what you're doing isn't hurting anybody and it isn't stealing from somebody, pursue it. Keep it going. Keep that little flame burning, even if it's not something that the company you're working for or your friends or anybody else is really interested in. But we don't do that enough. We don't give ourselves permission because we're so cowed by a sector that kind of some people often says, oh, that's not right, or you're stupid, you should do it somewhere else, or nah. And we also have to be more values driven, given that we've got regulation and accountability increasingly here. And I know about regulation and accountability because I was a teacher. The government can come in at any point and ask to see what you're doing. You can go to jail if something goes wrong, even if it's not your fault. All sorts of responsibility there. So I can relate. And it's about really sticking to your work and pursuing what you need to do, and an understanding, and we'll come back to this again. What you've got to understand is that at any given time, when you're doing the right work, your vision and your values should drive that work and drive that strategy. And anybody working with you should be able to follow that like a snowplow down the freeway, really clearly. But at any point, that, like it was with me, is going to be against the interests, not the needs, not the regulatory requirements of, but the interests of the organisation. It will be, because somebody will go, oh, I don't like you doing that. Or, oh, we don't want to admit that risk or something. And that's where it's really important to be going straight down and holding on to your values and giving yourself permission. This is a really important point as well. We're not looking for everybody to agree with us all the time. They just have to feel that they're aligned with you, that they share a few common ideas, okay, and that you're interested in them. So we're looking at listening, the first part. So when we're listening, if you want to communicate upwards and be credible, okay, you've got to find out who these people are. Because when we're talking about why don't the board listen to me, why won't senior management give me the budget, that's not actually something that I hear marketing or finance or HR saying very much. So we've got to ask ourselves why. And we've got to ask ourselves, have we listened to the board? Do we even know who they are? You know, where else do they sit? You know, what other organisations are they working with, and how do they like to have information presenting to them? Some of the best things I've ever done are go and find out who else works with that particular person at that company. You know, some of these are, I don't know, Boeing, as well as wherever I'm working or working with. Go and talk to their security team if you can and find out what they do. You should be able to do that as a peer, right? And we need a bit more peer sharing. Really find out what they're interested in, how they like that to be presented to them. And it's the same with senior leadership. And become a trusted source. Now, a little story. The reason why it's really important to give your insight and become a trusted source is because the higher up you are, and I say this with respect, the less you know about what's going on in the business. That's why Undercover Boss is such a popular show, right? And that's not because they're stupid. That's just because they've got 50,000 million things to do. They're relying on you, on us, to tell them what they need to be doing, what the priorities are, why something is going wrong. Give them that insight, more than just the numbers. And a very famous, well-known airline did this with its employees, and lots of companies do this. It's called business innovation. And you don't necessarily have the time to do this all the time. It's quite complex to set up. But when companies do it and they say, tell us how we could improve processes, this airline saved £6 million a month because of something, a month, right? Imagine being able to tell your board you could save them £6 million a month. They'd listen. Because a cleaner filled in the form and said, if you put descaling agent down the toilets more than once a month, you'll save some money and process time. And it actually ended up saving them millions. So it's worth listening to everybody, right? But my point is not just being able to tell the board, you know, little ideas that somebody might have. It's also they need your insight, but they also want to feel good when they go out to lunch, to drinks at the Rosewood, or, you know, playing golf or whatever else with whoever they're, you know, out having fun with while we're at work making the money. And they need to feel confident. They want to have those little anecdotes that you're giving them, or the insight that you and your teams are giving them, right? So when you find out who they are, like if you're bored at the moment, for instance, I'm not picking on anybody here, but say if they are also sitting with Okta, Optus, Boeing, can't think of anybody else at the moment, LastPass, for instance, last year, they might have some real experience of security incidents right now. They might have some really pressing, burning questions they're going to ask you. Present to them, and this is the kind of thing I've told security and technology and architecture teams to do quite a bit, and there's a bit of resistance, but please try it, because, you know, it's going to work. Work out how they like the information presented, and one or two companies I've suggested this to, they just send an email every 2 weeks, or they have a meeting with certain execs, and they say, well, this is this situation, say at Okta. This is what happened, or this is what we know so far, link to the news story, or PDF it, whatever, so they don't have to click anything, do what you like. And then give your insight. So-and-so, you know, Matilda or Jimmy or whoever else in architecture or in DevOps or the CISO says, this is our position. This is what we think. This is no risk to us, or we don't have this, or we do have this situation. Present that up. And even if it isn't something that might directly concern them, present stuff to them so that they don't have to come chasing down the line. Because I think that's where it sometimes feels in cybersecurity teams. You're just constantly getting this avalanche of, oh my God, have we done this? Oh my God, we've got to do stuff on like this, and this is happening, and this company's done this. So if you can kind of present upwards in whatever format, now an email might not work. I actually hate newsletters, but if that's what works, but just updates, if they want to be told on Slack, if they want to have a call, I don't know, there's a million ways different companies work, and it depends on the size of the company. But try and present your insight, because that's what they've hired you for. And you are right, you do know things, despite what people on Reddit or Twitter are going to tell you. Okay? You do know things. And this is in the little resource pack. I gave you, it's very small, obviously you can't read it, but I do want to advise you to read it. It's by Dr. Anthony Vance, who works out of quite a lot of different universities, but I think he's most recently at University of Virginia. And it's all about, it's a really good article, and it suggests that idea and others about how CISOs can get the board to listen to them. And it's basically about, if you want to be credible, which is what being listened to is, you have to get their trust, and you have to show who you are. Yeah? Show who you are, show yourself professionally. The other thing I'd say is please read the room. The keynote this morning's session was from an official in Ukraine. It's not the only, sadly, conflict zone we have in the world at the moment. I think, the world we are all just being fire hosed with bad news. Whether we've got somebody in a conflict zone, or whether it's economic pressures or climate crisis or whatever it is, we have to make sure that we're reading the room, and that goes for the employees that you're working with as well as the leadership as well. I think it's really important to think about the language we're using as well. Given all the conflicts, for instance, using the language of war, threat, attack, whatever, pew-pew map, whatever, is that really necessary in the organisation you work in? Maybe if you're in the DoD, I don't know. But probably not if you're working for Nestle. The other rule is, please, when you're presenting upwards, have only 3 steps or 5 minutes. Don't make it last over 5 minutes what you're asking them to do or what you're telling them about. Yeah, if it's in like little bullet points, please, no more than 3 sentences to the board about one thing. Okay, because people don't have the bandwidth for it. It's why I say MFA. Saying use MFA doesn't work, because you've actually got to have, for MFA, there's actually considerably more than 3 steps. So, for instance, if a little tip, this isn't particularly to do with the board, but if you're trying to get people to do MFA for the organisation, which most of you are, hopefully, make it part of the onboarding. So before they even start, they've got all that authenticator app. Then they've got less of a step. Yeah? Think about removing that. But that's really important with the board, because they're not going to listen to you at all. They've got far too many things, and you've got the insight. Give it to them. Don't feel like you have to justify yourself. Be succinct, please. I see a lot of CISO kind of giving all these really wordy things and hiding behind all the metrics. Not going to work. I'd also, like I said, I really would like to mention the human factor. When I first got into cybersecurity, the human factor was just something that some social engineers mentioned, like it was just a thing. That's the human factor. I'm sure you've all heard it. But the human factor is a discipline. You study it. We've got experts, and it's about systems design around the people. It's not about blaming Angela in, accounting because she clicked a link. Angela accounting should be able to click on pretty much whatever the hell she likes. Your systems should be the ones that are stopping it and mitigating it. I know we're not in a utopia, but I'll come back to metrics in a second and why I disagree with all of that. But anyway, really think about the fact that we need systems thinking. And when you're talking about that, you're more credible. The board want to hear about it, and they want to hear about, I think, just culture. They need to hear about concepts. They need to hear you talking about peer-reviewed research. They need to hear that you're working with other experts from other sectors and the human factor experts. If you already work with them, you are, well, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're doing that. But talking about just culture is something they're using quite a lot in railways and aviation. It's not an easy thing to get to, not pretending it is. But if you can start talking about that with your board, I've seen that be really, really impactful, because it's about, well, we need to listen more. We need to be, thinking about, can people report things? Can we admit mistakes? Can we say, God, there's a problem here? Because if you're flying, I'm flying tonight, I want that pilot or that engineer to have been able to say, oh, wing looks like it's about to fall off, not just kind of do what we do with the internet. And, it's basically held together with sticky tape and hope, isn't it? Or, I think what Katie said, rock and roll and tape of silly string. This is basically it. We need honesty. That's a hidden one, so that's good. So last thing on that, don't miss an opportunity to listen. Please. And I mean, go out there. I'll use the example of Cybersecurity Awareness Month. How many people did we see doing Cybersecurity Special Month, like special kids with birthdays, and then we don't go to anybody else's party, do we? How many cybersecurity teams put alt text in their images, use screen reader compatible immersive readers with their stuff? How many security teams did collaborations for Pride Month, or for Black History Month, or for Transgender Week of Awareness, or for National Women's Day? Yeah. If you're not collaborating, you've got really great opportunities to collaborate and build trust so that you'll all just help. Be on a working party. One of our best allies when I was in-house was a chief marketing officer. And I got to know them because I was on a working party and I was on a group with for parents and carers. And we did some cybersecurity help, but they also saw that I would shut up and listen in the meetings. Okay. And I wasn't going to be the Department of No. So yeah, insight, collaborate. Metrics, I'm going to go really quickly over this. Please, for God's sake, don't present a screen like this to your board. I have seen slides with 4 times as many data visualizations as this present on one slide, presented upwards. And nobody got time for that, okay? We just can't do it. It should be, this is the point, 1 point per slide, really, or 2. Maybe just say it really quickly and get out, okay? Please do not keep putting metrics up there, because metrics are not necessarily a truth. We all know some of the vendor dashboards don't tell the entire story. And use qualitative data, studies, focus groups, the longer term work, because part of the reason they don't listen, or they feel like they're not listening, isn't just the lack of credibility because we're using weird numbers. It's because we're not getting them used to, like marketing do or HR do, the longitudinal studies, the listening, the focus groups, the diaries. We're all like, we've got to have a quick dashboard and we'll do this. But actually, the really good work, the impactful work, is the qualitative work. And remember that that's all I'll say on metrics. I really hate it. And I think also the over-reliance on phishing sims has damaged a lot of our credibility but that's another whole story. But yeah, too many metrics and click rates. So yeah, you shape the narratives and the realities of the room you're in. Now, that sounds a bit astrology girl, and I'll apologise because I'm a bit of a tarot girl, but it's true, okay? The energy you bring in with your war metaphors or whatever else, or your, yelling and screaming and, they're stupid, why are they clicking the links? As opposed to, I believe this work is important, I'm going to listen to you, or no, I won't do that, because it's important that we think about the humans in this. It's important that we do that. You shape those narratives, and you giving yourself permission to trust yourself, with all the gaslighting and negativity that goes on in this sector. And maybe I'm saying that because I'm a woman in tech, but honestly, you get doubted so often, and people will tell you, like I got told, why are you giving them water? It's the same with cybersecurity principles. There's loads and loads of things that you'll think of that your company's doing. Maybe it's risks that they shouldn't be accepting. Maybe it's things that they're kind of covering up. Or maybe it's practices, I'm going to mention phishing sims again, that really don't work and are probably breaching employment law. But think about those and be the snowplow down the freeway, okay? Light the path in the darkness with your light. And I know that sounds, I'm not even going to apologise for it, I don't even care. Okay? And accept that you're going to meet that opposition. Accept they're going to challenge you. Yeah? Oh, no, you're wrong. Okay. Here's my peer-reviewed research. Here's my insight. Here's my values. They can't argue with values. Well, I mean, they can. But they're not going to if you're convinced. The problem we have is that we use, made-up metrics and some Twitter poll and all the rest of it. Please, God, we're not on Twitter anymore. But just use real research. Use your own knowledge. And back it up, and then you're, with the conviction, because I see so many security teams falling down there because they're just kind of holding on to the metrics like a crutch. And be consistent and have the values and strategy. I've worked with so many security teams and I say, well, what's your strategy? And they don't have one. What's your objectives? We're going to run 50,000 phishing sims. we're going to get the click rate down. They've got a threat from China. Well, that's just an output or a thing. What's your objective? What's your outcome? What happened? What's the difference going to be for people? Yeah, when you finish that work, it should leave them feeling good. It should make a positive difference. They should be able to understand it. And remember this, that to be credible, you must be trusted. So they're not going to listen to you unless they can actually trust you, unless you listen to them. That's a whole trust-building thing. To be trusted, you've got to listen. Please listen. And before you listen, reflect on your own objectives and values. And if those are ones that you've been told to compromise, because we know that tech isn't one where we, necessarily love whistleblowers and people with ethics, right? I think, what was it, Andreessen Horowitz, Mark Andreessen just wrote a massive thing about how people in tech who have ethics are opposing innovation. He'd hate me. He wouldn't be alone. But anyway, just reflect on your own values and stick to those. This is one thing I can tell you. Please, 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 your work has value. And if you think you should be doing something, please keep doing it, because that's what the board want to hear. That's what your senior leadership hired you for, not to give them 50,000 vendor dashboard things or tell them, I don't know, there's some threat from somewhere. Tell them what they need to do and what you think. And even if it goes wrong, at least you've been true to what you thought instead of whatever the company thought. Yeah, because especially, with solar, if you think about SolarWinds, I'm not making a comment on that because I don't know enough about it, but if you've led with your values, there's nothing else you can do. Okay? Questions? I am on LinkedIn and Blue Sky, and you can get that resource book by going to the link on my website as well if you want to. I promise there's no dodgy links, but you can also get it there. Okay? Any questions? That's it, really? Oh, right. Oh, well, okay. Can't see. Oh, yeah. I hate phishing simulations. I really do. I think sometimes they can be useful. Okay. I think I'd be surprised if most companies have run their phishing sims, especially the templates, past your GC, DPO, or any employment lawyer. Because every employment lawyer I show phishing sims to is horrified. Because especially when they're like, I'll give you an example of somebody I know in a very big company that had, on-site laundry. They did an on-site laundry phishing sim and it crashed the entire call service of this laundry, which works nationwide across the States, because everybody was phoning up in a panic, but they weren't, because they'd read the email, hadn't clicked, but they'd gone straight to, it's not okay. And what does that even achieve? If phishing sims really achieved anything, we wouldn't be here. We'd be in the Bahamas somewhere going, that was good. We did a couple of sims. I don't think tricking people works. And again, it's about trust. And I see too many CISO and security teams thinking that that's all they have to do. They've got entire strategies built around phishing sims instead of, looking at educating people on how to verify if you're getting a voice scam or a text scam. So I think it is an employment law dodgy thing. I'd be surprised if it shows that tech doesn't have unions, that we do phishing sims, because I wouldn't be able to get that past a union in a lot of places I've worked. But anyway, that's just my opinion. I'm quite opinionated about phishing sims. I'm sorry. I've unleashed the monster. Any other questions? Or is that? Okay, cool. That's good. Perfect. I can't see actually because there's so many lights. So thank you.